you can really start to hear the variation in the sounds that we've created here. Hey, what's happening, guys? It's Dean from Electronisounds. Stick around. Today I'm going to build a drum kit from scratch inside of the AKAI Force, and we're going to use the power of random.
Electronisounds Audio, the YouTube channel for you.
Here's what I'm going to attempt to do today, guys. This is the Roland 808 virtual drum machine. This is part of the Roland Cloud subscription service. I'm not real big on subscription services, but you do get a whole lot of stuff, I feel, with the Roland Cloud. And it is something that I've really been enjoying lately. Their virtual 303 sounds absolutely amazing. And so my intention today, guys, is to sample the individual sounds out of this 808. We're going to record them. It's going through the Tascam US 1608 audio interface, which is kind of irrelevant here. It just needs to be, you know, an audio interface, you know, so you've got quality sound coming out of Ableton. I've got the direct outputs from the audio interface plugged into the inputs of the Elektron Analog Heat MKII. I'm using the magnetic master preset setting inside of the analog heat, and I've got the output of the analog heat going into the AKAI Force. We're gonna go ahead and just play these sounds in manually. We're not doing any direct sound right now. I'm just got the speakers on, and that's what you're hearing the 808 kick through here. I'm just making sure that I'm getting a decent level. You've got two knobs on the back of the Force, which allow you to adjust your left input signal and your right input signal. And what I'm going to do is just start recording these drum sounds out individually. We're going to get one version of each sound, so, you know, a kick, a snare, the rim, the toms. I'm not really a big fan of 808 open cowbell, not open cowbell, but of 808 cowbell. So we're not going to be sampling the 808 cowbell into this kit because I just, you know, won't be needing that particular sound in my tracks. So let me go ahead and hit the arm button here in the Force. I've got the maximum sampling time set high enough, and we can just record these actual sounds out. There's a setting inside of the analog heat that allows you to see the input level. And the snare is, yeah, typically pretty darn loud. I'm actually overdriving the input signal on that. So what I'm going to do is turn my master down on the audio interface from the computer and hit that snare again so that I can get a non-overdriven, distorted version of it if I want to. But I'm going to turn the output back up again to get these other sounds, and I'll just keep an eye on the input sensitivity and the recording level as we go along here. Everything looking good so far. There really isn't a reason to hit things twice, per se. I'm just kind of making sure that we have everything we need. It's always best to record a little extra, you know. Nice little rim shot. Let me check the level here. I seem pretty loud. It's just up to the top, but not clipping. Oh, the clap is a little loud, so I'm going to bring the main output level from the audio interface down, because this is already set to the lowest input sensitivity. I can't set that any lower, so we'll have to adjust it on the audio interface. Alright, turn that back up again for the next few sounds. We're going to pass on that cowbell. Probably going to not use that crash either. I'm not really a big fan of the 808 crash. It's pretty harsh and nasty. But I do like that open hat. Looking good. And the closed hat. Okay, fantastic. Now, a lot of times my videos will run pretty long, which you guys will probably know if you've, you know, been around my channel at all. So I'm going to go ahead and edit these down into their individual one-shots, and I'm going to lay them out across a drum kit inside of the Force, and then I'm going to rejoin you guys, and we're going to talk about how we're going to use the power of random inside of the Force to make this drum kit actually come to life. Stay tuned, guys. Welcome back, guys. Okay, I've laid out a few of the sounds as a kit here. We've got a kick drum, the clap, the rim, and the snare, a hat, and the toms. What I'd like to do is I'd like to go ahead and get a few different variations of the kick drum sample and put those out across these bottom 3 pads, so that across the bottom, I'm making a 16, pad kind of, kit here. So that way across the bottom, I'll have 4 different variations of the kick drum. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and adjust the tuning and maybe adjust the settings on the analog heat here and record a few bit more different variations of the 808 kick drum, and I'll layer them out across these bottom 3 pads and check back in with you guys. Dean, you know you haven't done anything random yet, right? It's coming, guys. Hang on. Okay, guys, I've gone ahead and recorded 4 variations now of the 808 kick drum, and I've got those spread across the bottom 4 pads. This is not direct sound, you're just hearing out of my speakers right now for an example. And what I'm going to do is, this is the hi-hat here, and this is where we're going to start working on some randomization. We got this off of the default 808 preset kit inside of, the Roland Cloud 808 here. And so if we load up their kit called Drive Kit and hit the hi-hat, I don't know if you can hear that, but that's a very subtle variation in the sound. It's not the exact same tone that this hi-hat is. So we're going to go ahead and record that out. We're going to go back to the sampler. I'm going to hit arm. Our levels were already good because I checked them beforehand, and here we go. Let's go ahead and record that sample in. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and give this a name of closed hat 2, because I've already got closed hat 1 sitting on the pad here, and keep. We're going to go to the menu and sample edit. Go ahead and trim out this hat here. And we'll go ahead and normalize this sample real quick, because I've been normalizing all of the samples as I've been doing the editing inside of the Force here. And we'll get really close up on this start point of the sound, right? And we'll do a discard, cool. And we'll get maybe a little bit more trimmed off the end there, cool. And discard, and then maybe I'll grab just that tiny bit at the end of the sound. I know I said I wasn't going to do any editing on this video, guys, sorry, but I just want to show you how we're going to get this sample actually into place. Okay, so I've recorded the sample, we've edited the sample, and we're good to go there. I'm going to move the camera angle just a tiny bit so you can get a clearer shot of the screen for what I'm doing here. Okay, guys, so we're going to go ahead and assign our new hi-hat sample to the same pad that our original hi-hat sample is assigned to. I'm going to hit edit, and I'm going to tap the pad that I want to assign the new sample to. And then in the samples tab over here, I can click the second, I don't know if you saw that there, but it shows here that our first sample, this is showing our layers now. Samples tab, whoops, sorry about that, guys. In the samples tab, right, if I click it twice, it goes over to this page where it now shows the layers, and you can click where it says none. We can double click that, and we can go down and we can just choose closed hat number 2. And now we've got 2 hi-hats layered onto this same pad, which is kind of what we want, but not quite exactly what we want. If you go over to the LFO modulation tab, now you can tell that layer to play back these sounds in random order. I don't know why we're not really hearing much of a difference here. Let's make sure it's actually doing it by really changing the semitone on that second one. It's actually doing it, yeah, you can hear that randomly every now and again there. It's grabbing that other sound, okay? So you have to make it real extreme if your samples are pretty close together and similar. But these hi-hats, we didn't really do a lot. They're from the same unit. So now what we're getting is this ever so tiny variation as it, picks between these two different hi-hat samples. Let's go ahead and record a third hi-hat sample and a fourth hi-hat sample and assign those to the two available slots beneath these so that we have four different, slightly different hi-hat samples that the Force will be randomly picking from every time I hit this drum pad. Before we continue, guys, I didn't really feel like that hi-hat was different enough, so I went ahead and on the fine-tuning, I adjusted our second hi-hat here to be at -12, just on the fine-tuning, so that it's just a little bit subtly, more different than our first sample. And I think rather than trying to get a different sound out of the actual, virtual Roland here, what I'm going to do is record the next two hi-hats using a different preset on the Elektron Analog Heat here. That way they're processed just a tiny bit differently, and hopefully we'll be able to hear a little bit more variation in these sounds as I get them inside of the Force. Okay, let me just show you guys the assignment process again. So here's the third hi-hat, closed hi-hat 3, that I've recorded out of the 808, and I've done the editing on this now. So I'm going to hold the edit button, I'm going to tap the pad I want to assign that third sample to, right? And I'm on the samples tab, I'm going to tap that again, so it goes over to the second little page of 3 total pages. Samples page 1, samples page 2, samples page 3, right? So we want to go to samples page 2, and it gives you the layers list of everything, of all, of the 4 possible samples you can put on that pad. So we can adjust that and turn the knob, or we can double click this and just simply choose hi-hat number 3. We've already been in the LFO modulation tab, and we've told this pad that it's going to play back these samples in a random order. And I've detuned the second hi-hat on the fine-tuning -12, just so it's that much, a little bit different from the other one. I think we'll go ahead and go into, no, we'll leave the offsets on these the way they are. There's the third page here where you would set the sample offsets. I think is more useful if you're not doing a random on your pad, but rather you're actually layering samples to hit at the same time. This offset, you can, move and nudge how those will, hit, so you could create more of a flam than all of the samples hitting together. You would just be adjusting the offsets. But really what we're dealing with here is just, the second page for now, and we're going to go ahead and... It's very, very subtle. I don't know if you guys can even hear the difference there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take that third one. I'll adjust the fine-tuning up 12 so that it's, again, a little tiny bit different. I used a different preset on the Analog Heat to record this sound through. But we're talking, these subtleties here with the hat sound are very, very subtle. And just give us that tiny little bit more, variation in the sound. In fact, another thing I could maybe do, guys, would be to adjust the volume on these. We could take the second hi-hat's volume down to 120 and the third hi-hat's volume down to 100, leaving the first hi-hat at 127. So now not only do we have some, 3 actually, physical different samples, but we've got some slight detuning, very slight. This isn't semitone detuning, it's just really, really slight here in the fine tuning section. This is really going to be nice for giving us a really clean hi-hat sound, guys. Let me record a fourth variation of this and get that in here. So I've sampled the second snare now, you guys. So I've got 2 snares on our snare drum pad. But instead of going over to the LFO modulation tab and setting it to random, I've set it to cycle through those 2 samples. So it's literally playing sample 1, then sample 2, then sample 1, then sample 2, every time we hit the snare drum pad. And the second snare is just a very subtle variation. It's been recorded through a different preset on the Analog Heat. And I've removed some of the high frequencies with a filter inside of Ableton on the sound before I actually recorded it into the Force, therefore, giving it just that tiny little bit of subtle difference from our first snare as well. And now I can just tap this pad over and over. And it's cycling literally between those two samples. It's playing, you know, snare 1, snare 2, snare 1, snare 2 kind of thing. And it's very, very subtle difference. But it is quite a bit different than just playing a static sample, you know. Things start to really come alive. And you'll hear, like, we'll make a beat in just a minute with the finished kit. And you'll see what I mean. Thanks for sticking with, guys. We've gone ahead and recorded ourselves a second variation on the rim shot from the 808, and we're going to start editing this out here. Now, I know a lot of people might be thinking, Dean, you know, why do you take the time to, you know, do this when you could probably just download some 808 samples and load them in here and, you know, into the Force and be good to go? Well, I mean, the thing is, guys, is that I find that, you know, when you're, you know, making your music and whatnot, that you're, you know, for me personally, I'm going to want to spend the time and I'm going to want to do a bunch of this stuff myself. This stuff is fun to me. I don't mind, you know, working on drum kits and working on sounds and whatnot and getting to use some of my own creations in music. I know that, you know, basically this is just 808 samples and they're going to be pretty similar to, you know, if I would have, you know, just downloaded an 808 kit and, you know, loaded them in here. But one of the things that I try to emphasize a lot, guys, is that the little things add up. And I really, really believe that, you know, the little things add up. So taking the time and creating your own sounds or, you know, recording stuff through the gear you've got, I think it's a great way to spend your time. I mean, why have an Elektron Analog Heat if we're not going to use it creatively? You get what I'm saying? So I've edited the second rim sound now, and we're going to layer that with the original rim sample onto this pad here. I'll hit edit, I'll tap that pad. We're going to go to the second page of the samples tab, and it's got our rim 1 there. I'm going to double tap on the layer beneath it. And we're just going to scroll to find rim 2, right? Now it's layering those together and playing both rim samples at the same time. We're going to go to the LFO modulation tab, and I'm going to put this one probably to cycle as well as what we're doing with this snare drum, so that it'll play rim 1 and then rim 2 back to back. And they're very subtle, but they're different. The second one I recorded through a different preset on the Analog Heat, and I've removed a lot of the high frequencies using a filter inside of Ableton. We're going to bring, let's see here, I want to bring the volume down rather, on the second sample, just the tiniest little bit, I think. Now, you could record, you know, like, say, grab a different drum machine or grab a sample from your sample library and put 4 different rim shots, completely different sounds on a pad if you want. And that can get, you know, pretty extreme and pretty glitchy and pretty creative in your sound design. And if that's something that you're going for, absolutely do that. With this kit, I'm just trying to create kind of a subtle, varied 808 kit that hopefully I can use in, you know, several different tracks and whatnot. That's nice, you guys. Now, again, what I'm going for is not an extreme difference so that you're hearing, you know, a completely different sound each time you hit it, you know. But I know that there are subtle differences in these sounds that are helping us eliminate that sort of machine gun, drum machine static sound and bringing a little bit more life into the drums that we'll program with this kit in the end. Let's not forget to save as well, so save and save that project. Okay, I've sampled out now different versions of each of the low tom, the mid tom, and the high tom. So you can see that I've got 2 toms sampled on each pad now. And if you go over to the LFO modulation tab, you can turn those to either, you know, random or to cycle, or you can layer those together to have, you know, two samples or 3 samples or 4 samples on one pad. Double tap so we get to the second page. You can adjust, you know, the fine tuning on those. In fact, let's do that just the tiniest bit on the second one of each of these tom sounds. Let's do the fine tuning down 12. This isn't a semitone, so we're not turning it down an octave. I think it's like 100 or 128 of these fine tunings equals one semitone. So we're talking about like a tenth of a semitone adjustment kind of thing between the tones of these samples. That sounds really nice. Again, here, we're not really hearing a super big difference in, you know, when the samples go between each other, and that's what I'm going for here. If I wanted a really extreme, you know, difference of when I keep tapping this for it to spit out lots of random sounds and whatnot, then I probably would have loaded different toms onto each pad rather than resampling a variation of the same sound. You can really start to hear it as like you're programming stuff out. For instance, if I hold the arpeggio key and I hit the hi-hat so that it starts rolling on 16th notes and you're not hearing my fingers donk on the keys, you can really start to hear the variation in the sounds that we've created here. And taking that little bit of time now to create the kit means that all the beats that I create with this kit will be that much more alive. I'm going to go ahead and switch the audio over to direct audio. I won't be able to talk, but we'll make a beat real fast, and you can hear what this kit sounds like a little bit more clearly. I hope you guys have found this useful in some way. I really like the fact that we can layer 4 samples per pad on the AKAI Force. And you can use that to create, you know, really thick, punchy sounds, or you can use that in very subtle ways, like we did here today, to create a unique 808 kit. Now, one of the reasons why I would do something like this is now if I ever decide to not pay for the subscription service of the Roland Cloud, I've still got myself a nice custom 808 here that's going to be a little bit different from every everybody else's 808 drum kit. I really suggest taking the time and, making your own custom, sounds, even if they're only going to be just a tiny little bit different from everybody else's sounds, because those little tiny differences, they add up, guys. They add up to a really polished, finished product. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time. Real quick, one last thing, guys. A lot of times I try to give away for free the kits that I make and stuff like this. I can't really do that with this kit because we directly sampled the sounds out of the existing Roland 808 here from the Roland Cloud. And that's kind of, breaking their sort of copyright agreements and whatnot. I'm not authorized to distribute, Roland sounds free of charge, per se. So that's why I'm not giving this kit away for free, you guys. I hope that makes sense, and I hope you understand. Being as though I'm a sound designer, and I make my living as a sound designer and a sample pack maker, I'm kind of big on following those kind of guidelines and not giving stuff away for free when it's really not supposed to be given away for free. Sorry, guys, but if you grab the Roland Cloud, you can have access to the, the 808 inside of the Roland Cloud. I think it's $19.99 a month right now, and you really do get a lot of stuff in there, way more than just a 909, a 303, and the 808, all kinds of virtual instruments and virtual emulations of some of their older gear as well. Thanks for watching, guys. I know I keep saying one last thing and then coming back, but seriously, one last thing. You're going to want to, remember to save your kit as an actual drum kit and not just a project. And that way you can pull that drum kit up in any project. If you hit the save key, you'll get these options here. If you want to save it as a project or if you want to save it as an actual drum kit. And now, inside of the AKAI Force, I've got an internal drive and I've also got an SD card in the front where I'm storing a lot of my samples. You can file this, anywhere inside of the Force where you're storing your drum kit, so that way you know where to find it for next time. So again, you'll just press the save button and you'll select drum kit, so you can save it as an actual kit to load instead of a full project.